The survival genre has gotten two new gems over the past few weeks: Palworld, a game where you enslave knockoff Pokemon to do your bidding, and Enshrouded, a more grounded survival game with its roots planted in deep fantasy and world building. So in this video, guys, I'm going to be comparing the new survival game Palworld to the other new survival game Enshrouded to see how they stack up against one another when it comes to the attention to detail between these two games. And I know these games are quite different from one another, but they are both survival games, so I thought it'd be fun to compare them, and I do whatever the hell I want on this channel anyway, so here we are. Oddish. Beginning with some plant physics, as you can see here in Palworld, whenever you harvest a plant, the plant itself poofs into a cloud of dirt, and then the leaves rain down until they disappear. While in Enshrouded, the plant itself explodes and the twigs and leaves gently blow away in the breeze. Isn't that cool? And while we're on the subject of plant physics, in Palworld, your character can't interact with the grass or bushes as they walk through them, as the plants do not interact with the character's movement at all. While this isn't the case with Enshrouded, as the grass moves as you walk through it, and the branches of the bushes twist and bend as you interact with them. Now let's move on to player combat between the two games. Now, melee combat in Palworld is pretty interesting because instead of just gently trying to capture these pals, you instead beat them down with bats and bows until you can catch them, or harvest them when they have this little KO symbol going over their eyes. Though I do have a feeling that those eyes don't mean that they're KO'd, because I just harvested meat off this dude. While I can only describe Enshrouded's melee combat as being a bit more Souls-esque, where you can change the tide of battle with a well-placed parry or combat roll. But I did notice a cool feature where if you defeat an enemy in the grass around the enemy kinda dies and goes away, but then once the enemy disappears, the grass grows back. It's a pretty cool effect. One thing I found a little interesting is that whenever you're harvesting wood in Palworld, whenever you chop down the tree itself falls through the ground and all the leaves and twigs and branches break off and fall through the ground as well. It doesn't look too bad, but what I find interesting is that in Enshrouded, it basically does the exact same thing. I just find that interesting. I also wanted to show a quick comparison of the bow hunting between the two games. As you can see here in Palworld, whenever you aim the bow, the camera zooms in really close to the character. It's a really stylistic point of view of you aiming your bow. Whereas in Enshrouded, whenever you aim your bow, it's not as impressive. The camera kind of centers on your character. And I'm not saying that Enshrouded looks bad, but it's not nearly as stylistic or as impressive as Palworld. I also wanted to show a comparison of how the shadows work between the two games, and as you can see here in Palworld, this campfire that I'm sitting next to does not cause my character model to cast a shadow, whereas the sun in the skybox does cause my character to cast a shadow. And what I find interesting about this is that just like the tree models being the same between the two games, the shadows are the same as well. As you can see here in Enshrouded, the campfire does not cause my character model to cast a shadow, while the sun in the skybox does. Two survival games made by two completely different teams sharing things like this I've always find interesting. And since these are survival games, I wanted to see if there was any interesting cooking animations between the two games, and there are. As you can see here in Palworld, whenever you cook something over a campfire, there's a cool animation of you frying the food in a frying pan, and it reminds me a lot of Breath of the Wild. Enshrouded has unique cooking animations as well, and I'm just glad that the days are long gone in survival games where, like Ark, you had to cook your food by putting the food in the campfire's inventory and it just magically appeared cooked. This is much better. And since we're playing with fire, I wanted to compare what would happen whenever you stand in your campfire between the two games. And as you can see here in Palworld, there's a pretty decent animation of flames being rendered all over your character. It looks pretty good, whereas in Enshrouded, there's no flames that catch onto your character. Your character just starts like poofing smoke and ticking away damage. I mean, it doesn't look super bad, but Palworld in its anime style looks better and more stylistic. I also wanted to talk about one of my most requested features in survival games, and I'm happy to say that both of these games have it: the ability to sleep in a bed and go from night to day. And as you can see here in Palworld, whenever you sleep in a bed, the camera fades to black and then poof, it's sunrise. Whereas in Enshrouded, it handles it a bit differently, whereas when you sleep in a bed, it fast forwards time so that it reaches the dawn more quickly. And now the last thing I wanted to compare in this video is the water physics between the two games, and I searched high and low all over Enshrouded just to find out that there's actually no lakes or rivers or oceans in Enshrouded, and I would have just thrown this comparison out, but I was so impressed with how stylistic and anime-like the Palworld water animations are. Whenever you splash, it looks great, and I love when you climb out of the water, you can actually see the little droplets of water bouncing all over your character and onto the ground. I know that Enshrouded doesn't have water, so it's not really a comparison, but I wanted to show this part of Palworld off because it looks so great. Well, guys, this has been my direct comparison of Palworld versus Enshrouded. Both of these games, I feel, are fantastic survival games. They, like I said at the beginning of the video, they are very different from one another. They focus on very different things, but they each do their own things very well. I love catching pals in Palworld and using them to battle to catch bigger pals, and also in Enshrouded, I love like the environmental storytelling. That world actually feels really handcrafted, and I enjoy both of these games for their own reasons. And as I always say when it comes to these direct comparison videos, I'm not trying to say that either of these games is better than the other. I've really enjoyed my time with both of them, and I hope you guys do as well. But guys, let me know down in the comments, what do you guys think? Are you guys playing Enshrouded? Are you guys playing Palworld? Which do you prefer? Let me know down in the comments. But guys, that's all I have for this video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya.